So I always like to try to help get you started going down the right path here as far as how to write this program. So here in let's see, we're going to be in the telephone directory. I'm going to let me cd into the telephone directory. I'm going to run new py. It's going to be the program that we're going to write is called telephone phone.py, and I'm going to open that. And the first thing, change the doc strings, description. So something useful. And we're going to get some text. And just like in a couple of other programs that we've written right now, we don't know what that's going to be, if it's going to be from the command line or if it's going to be coming from a file. So at this point, we're just going to say it's text, and it's some sort of a string value. And it'll be the input uh, text or file we could put here because we will accept a file argument. We are going to have see, we're not going to have a string option, but we are going to have a value that is an integer, and that's going to be the seed, and that's going to be uh, random seed value. It's going to be an int, and the default is going to be none, which is kind of funny. None is not an int, but what we're saying is that if an argument is provided, it should be parsable as an integer. Um, and then if nothing is provided, then the default will be none. And then the other thing that we're going to have is we're going to have a floating point value, which I don't believe we've had yet so far, and that's going to be the m or the dash dash mutations value, and that'll be percent mutations that we're going to introduce, and we can call this mutations, we can call this text, we can call this seed, um, and the type of this is going to be a float, which I don't believe we've used so far, and the default is going to be 0.1. Um, we are not going to have a file or a boolean, and so that covers that. Those are our if we go back and look at our string diagram, we're going to get some text, some seed, and some mutations. So those cover those. One thing that we're going to need to do is to intercept this, and then we're going to need to see if args.text. We're going to see if that is a file, and we can do that with os.path.isFile. So if it's true that that is a file, then we're going to set args.text equal to opening args.text and reading it. And because it's possible, it's probable that that text is going to have a new line at the end. We're going to say rstrip to get rid of that. And then we're going to have to return args. Never forget to return your arguments or you won't get anything. So at that point, we should have something that we can print. For instance, here, let's see. We're going to say text. Text is equal to args.text. And I'll just get rid of this for the moment. And we're supposed to say, you said, and I think that it is a colon there. So let's make sure that this program works. Let's just run it with no arguments. That looks pretty reasonable. Let's run it with a -h. That looks pretty nice. If I say telephone and I say foo, it says you said foo. Let's give it an input file. I'm going to give it inputs.fox, and it says you said the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Just to double check, let me copy that and run this telephone as that is the input. So whether the text is coming from the command line or from an input file, it's echoing back you said, which is how we should start. We can double check that it is going to um, uh, reject bad seed values. That's great. It's also going to reject a bad mutations value. These have to be let's see, so the seed would have to be an integer, and the mutations would need to be a floating point value. And if I run with both of those, both of those are acceptable. So we have a pretty good start for a program. We need to handle this, though, the mutations being between 1 and 0. So 10 10 is parsable as a floating point number, but that's not going to be a valid value. So that's something else we're going to need to check here. We need to say if it's not true that args.mutations is between 1 and 0, then let's see, let's just copy this error here. This is the error string that we want to put. I'm going to call parser.error. I'm going to use an f string here, and I'm going to put that in, and I always like to echo back what it is the problem so that the user knows. So I'm going to put args.mutations so that they can see what the value is. A lot of times I might mix up the arguments that I give to a program, and so maybe they mix up the values for seed and mutations for some reason. And they just mixed up an int and a floating point value. And then if you echo that back, then the user can see, oh, that was the value that I meant to get for seed, not for mutations. So let's run this again and try that. Yes, mutations must be between 1 and 0. Let's see how we're doing on our tests. The tests are always written in a particular order such that the first test is that the program exists, the second one is that it passes a usage, and then after that I usually pass in bad values to make sure that you're checking for those. So yes, indeed, it's checking for a bad seed, a bad mutation as a string, a bad mutation that's not a string, and then it's testing for echo. And so it's saying, let's see, with the number of mutations, it's expecting back basically that it gets back the same text again. So if we were to modify this to say you said and then I heard, and I think that these need to line up, is that right? Let's go back and look at the specifications. Yes, and there's a space there after I heard so that the colons line up because I'm just that kind of a person. So if I run this, interesting. So anyway, I can look more into this. It's asserting that the return value is equal to 0. And it gives okay, so the mutations, a value of 0 is allowed. So I need to allow that. So it needs to be greater than or equal to that. So that should work now. Let's test it again. Great. So I remember now that the test for echo was that with a mutations of 0, it should just simply echo back the text again. So if we were to run this and none of those really make any difference right now, it should just echo back the text. That should get us started on how to write this program. Let me see if there's anything else here. And at this point, your code should pass up to test for echo because we just want to be able to repeat back that text twice. So going forward, what we're going to need to figure out is how to modify the text so that when we say I heard, that it's something that has the number of mutations that we want.